Previously on Dispatch at Jack's.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Are they in the proper approach pattern for today?
Negative.
All weapons! Now! Charge the lightning field.
Television, I just got three things that kind of stuck out to me that were new for this year. The Bear, I came to a little late.
Show.
I watched, I loved. Fantastic show. Severance, again, another fantastic show.
Great show based on the Backrooms, kind of.
Yeah.
Inspired by the Backrooms.
Yeah, there's definitely some connective tissue in between those. Excited for the next season. Great little bit of mind-bending sci-fi.
And good cast.
And great cast, great performances.
Yep. Well done,
and
show.
I think Yellow Jackets, I super enjoyed that.
I think that's the best show of 2022.
Yeah, it was so much fun. I think it kind of trailed off at the end, but I think the setup and slow burn world building, but with all the twists and turns that come about, and fantastic performances, just
by
such a
good
fun
actors.
show. Oh yeah.
It's a good show. The Yellow Jackets is one of the better series that I've seen in the last few years. Great show.
Agreed. We may not agree on the sadness, but we agree on Yellow Jackets.
Oh, 100%. That's an awesome.
Yeah. I guess maybe a late edition. I thought Wednesday was surprisingly really enjoyable.
Especially for late Tim Burton. Yeah.
It's the
very
only
good.
Tim Burton thing I've liked in years.
In many years. Well, I mean, a lot of people like Dark Shadows, but it's whatever.
Well,
it's fine.
Did they like it because they hadn't seen it? Is that the issue?
Well, okay, look, compared to a lot of the other ones that he's put out, Dark Shadows is a surprisingly competent film. I didn't care for it, but it's better than, I don't know, almost everything else he's done since, Mars Attacks?
Ooh, since Mars Attacks.
I mean, because
Sleepy
Todd
Hollow,
was pretty shit.
Planet of the Apes.
That's okay. The Terrible.
Big Fish.
Terrible.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Terrible.
The Corpse Bride.
Okay.
Sweeney Todd.
Well, he didn't direct that, though.
Yes, he did.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh, because he didn't direct Nightmare Before Christmas.
No, that
so
was...
I assumed he didn't direct that one.
Yeah, that was stuff he created while he was working at Disney, and then they decided to make it, and he was a part of it, but didn't direct it. Alice in Wonderland.
Terrible.
Dark Shadows.
Watchable.
Frankenweenie.
Not as good as the short.
No. Big Eyes.
You know, I didn't see
Oh,
that
you're
one.
fine. Sucked. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children.
Didn't care for it.
Yeah, nope. Dumbo.
Sucked.
Atrocious. So Wednesday, it's like, oh, all right.
Hey, you made something good.
Yeah. I mean, technically he only directed 4 episodes, but he was a producer in the whole thing.
Well, right. Yeah, he's like the showrunner
Yeah.
or whatever. And you know what? It's maybe he should go back to doing long form stuff, because I thought that Wednesday was clever. It makes reference to the Raul Julia, Angelica Houston movie without being ham-fisted or too obvious. You know, it makes kind of subtle reference to saying that that's possibly in canon, or at least giving a wink and a nod to it. I love the actress in it. Interestingly enough, I saw a horror movie with her in it like a couple of days ago, where she's the sound person on a porn shoot.
Oh, you're talking about X?
It goes, yes.
Yeah.
It's an okay movie. It was just weird seeing her in that context after seeing her as like a teenage girl in Wednesday.
Yeah,
you know
no,
what I mean?
I'd seen her in that first, so I was like, oh,
okay, yeah. I had not seen X, so I was like, that's makes me feel uncomfortable. And also, this movie isn't going to get all that good because I know she's later in mainstream stuff. So,
yeah.
You haven't got to that point. In Venture Brothers, when Dr. Venture is very excited because he's watching a porno, he's like, that Dolly Parton made a risque movie called The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. And Brock's like, Doc, you're going to be pretty disappointed. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if she's
yeah,
coming.
Wednesday was good.
Yeah, Wednesday was good.
And it really kind of has no right to be.
No.
Even conceptually.
No. I heard they were doing it, I was like, who cares? And then I saw the trailer
It doesn't
and I was like,
make sense on paper.
I feel like it has the spirit. It has the ambiance of the originals.
I think the worst part of that coming out is the asshole trolls online who are like, I can't believe they made her Latina. They're just trying to be politically correct. And like, her dad's name is Gomez. She is Latina. Why are you fighting this? I don't understand. She's not supposed to be white. That was the offensive part. They are Latino. And I loved Raul Julia in that role. I don't think anybody will ever. He and John Aston. Is that his name?
I think it's John Poopy Pants. That's
probably the one. That's the one. Uh-huh. Yeah, both great. Raul Julia, I think, is the ultimate manifestation of that role.
Mm-hmm.
Luis Guzman, while I understand what Tim Burton was going for, this grotesque little troll man, I get it, but that's not Gomez to me. Whatever.
They're not all exact. They don't all hit, but I think there's enough that do land.
Catherine Zeta-Jones is an inspired choice for that role. She has that weird, quiet, Angelica Houston obviously was great, and mostly because of the key lighting that they would always put on her. I thought Catherine Zeta-Jones did a very good job of channeling that vibe, and I thought she was very good in it.
I was fine with her. It was all written by Miller and Goff, of Smallville and Spider-Man fame.
Oh, okay.
Back on the scene, doing something worthy.
Wow. Okay, yeah, Wednesday was good. I think it is a worthy watch. It's kind of like Sabrina, where it's surprisingly competent.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of Sabrina.
I don't really care about it, but as far as like updates go, well done. Instead of being the whitewashed afternoon syndication show that came out in the 90s, it really leans into the witch stuff. It's kind of dumb on one hand because it's all like the Christianified version of witchcraft and whatever. So it deals with Satan a lot and the dark arts or whatever, and pentagrams are evil, that kind of thing, instead of leaning into the actual fun, good pagan stuff and all that. But it's still, they go way farther than you would think they would. There's a lot of sacrificing people to Satan. It's pretty hardcore, for what it is. And if I remember right, it does cross over with Riverdale at one point.
I think so, but it's a little outside my purview.
I think it does. Because like with Archie Comics, they went in a cool, meta, hip, indie direction, Mm-hmm. I still don't know who won between Archie and Predator, but
probably the same person who won when it was Archie versus Punisher.
It's us. We're the ones that won.
Winner, Archie dinner.
Because I was going through vintage comics the other day when I was like pricing some stuff at work, and there was a bunch of like Life with Archie, and then I was like, oh, Afterlife with Archie makes way more sense now. There was a long period of time where Archie comics were super Christian, where they were like published by a Christian publication company. Anyway, doesn't matter. But I want to see how far they push back against that. You know what I mean? That's much like 2022. This is obviously fluid because the phrase "shakeups at Warner Brothers" I think is a weekly headline for like Variety. But once again, Warner Brothers made huge overhauls in who's running their movie division, specifically what they have often referred to as the DCEU, we finally now have a Kevin Feige-like character in charge of the what they now officially call DC Studios. That's the first time I've ever heard anyone call it that.
I feel like that's a new terminology they're bringing around.
It makes sense. So DC Studios is now being run by James Gunn.
Yeah.
Well, also Peter Safran, who's a producer that works with James Gunn. But that is a weird one. I feel like that's almost like when Polaroid made Lady Gaga their head of production or whatever, which they did. That was the thing.
Oh,
she was
okay.
No, seriously, she was their chief creative officer or whatever, which is bizarre. And that produced a lot of ripples that are, I think, maybe good and bad. I mean, a lot of it is they're finally purging the Snyderverse. Oh, gee, it only took 9 years, which they have been sort of fighting since it happened, fighting themselves on.
But they still have irons in that particular fire, i.e. the Flash film.
And Aquaman.
Well, technically, I guess Shazam 2.
Right, they were already in the can. You can't do anything about that.
You mean like how Batgirl was also in the can, and they most certainly did something about that?
Oh, they eject the shit out of that? Well, that was like a weird tax thing where they could save more money not releasing it. Also, it probably wasn't very good, I hate to say.
We'll never know.
We eventually saw Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. I don't think we'll ever see Batgirl.
No, I heard that the directors tried to go in and pull it off the hard drives, and it was just gone. It had been deleted.
It's different. It's like you can't steal the reel anymore. It's a digital thing. It's gone. I don't think anyone, maybe some guy at DC or Warner Brothers squirreled it away secretly, and maybe it'll get released online later. That shit's gone, man. It's never coming out. I mean, it'd probably be easier to see the unaired Bochco produced Wonder Woman pilot that apparently you don't remember.
Yeah,
Stephen Bochco, you're the one who did like NYPD Blue and all that.
Right.
He produced a Wonder Woman TV show that never made it past pilot. It's not like the Aquaman pilot that never took anywhere. What was that called? Mercy Reef, which actually wasn't bad. But anyway, you're not going to see Batgirl. It ain't happening. And so officially, James Gunn has put the kibosh on the Snyderverse once and for all. You know, people out there, they're Snyder fans or whatever. That's fine. You can like his work. You can like movies. You can like his take on things. We're not judging you for that. We don't like them. And I think it's pretty obvious why now, especially the critical reactions to, let's say, Man of Steel, Batman. Well, all of them. Not liked in general. But the weird thing about this one was that they had announced that Henry Cavill was coming back as Superman. They were going to move forward with Wonder Woman 3. They had talked about how The Flash was going to like help save this universe. Michael Keaton was going to come back as Batman in multiples, including Batgirl. And then when they hired Gunn and Safran, nope. None of that's happening.
Yeah.
It was like a couple of weeks after Henry Cavill said he was coming back for Man of Steel 2. They were like, don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. Which is sad, because Henry Cavill, I think, was a completely wasted, perfect Superman.
Especially since it seemed from the outside that he kind of bailed on future Witcher stuff to be Superman.
To do this. Yeah. And he was genuinely a fan. He got so into the role that because Clark is from Kansas, he became a Chiefs and Royals fan. And has been on the sideline of Chiefs games. And he constantly, every Instagram thing I see with him, he's got a Chiefs hat on. You know, like, he's from Britain. He doesn't give a shit about the Chiefs until now. I feel badly because not only was he aesthetically the perfect Superman, not a bad actor either, but they wasted him. They wasted him with bad movies. And most people may not know this. He landed the role in Man of Steel because he had auditioned for Bryan Singer's Superman Returns. But, you know, Brandon Routh kind of looked like Christopher Reeve, so that's why he got the role. So instead of, they just used his old audition tape and then called him up. So
I don't think I did.
yeah, I think he's the best on-screen Superman you're ever going to get, other than Christopher Reeve. But he's gone. But on the other side of that coin, we don't have Jason Momoa anymore, which is fine.
Well, it sounds like we do, just in a different role.
What do you mean?
I believe he's being transitioned over to be Lobo.
Oh, they've been talking about that for like 10 years now.
I mean,
though.
he said
You know
that.
what
I mean, he's gone online saying, "Hey, there's a project that I'm doing in DC now that I've been super excited and pumped for years. That isn't Aquaman."
Oh, interesting. Because, well, he had originally auditioned for the role of Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy and only lost it to Dave Bautista, which, I mean, I get why. For the way that they write Drax, I think he would have been good in that role in a different context. So it is kind of funny that he's moving Momoa around. And one of the reasons that Momoa was a stupid choice for Aquaman was look, he might be a nice guy. He might be a cool guy. I don't know, but he comes across as douchey, let's be honest. And Zack Snyder is a person who makes douchey movies. And it's really annoying. And he cast him because he looks, quote, badass, but also because he's related to Pacific Islanders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine. Why are you making the king of Atlantis a Pacific Islander?
Well,
Atlantis. Look, I get he's the king of the seven seas. I get that.
well,
Okay.
I mean, they're switching up the story. They're doing their own thing. As far
Well,
as
did they though? I mean, did they? I mean, you saw those movies. There's no story to be
what
had
I'm
in
saying
those
is
movies.
like it doesn't have to be this blonde-haired Aryan Aquaman.
Does not have to be a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy. 100% agree. But defaulting to a Pacific Islander seems an odd choice. Look what they did with Namor. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love that. Especially since you're going to finally give some recognition to Mesoamerica.
Mm-hmm.
Like, cool. Why is he a Pacific Islander, the king of Atlantis? Like, I don't...
Well, I mean, I don't personally see the problem with it. He seems like a somewhat genuine guy. He doesn't seem as douchey as I think
He does seem... No, I know. His persona seems douchey. I think he is genuinely a nice guy. Kind of like Guy Fieri. Like, apparently... He's a super nice guy, even though he comes off as the lead singer of Smash Mouth. But
I mean, it's like they have a white woman comes up to Pacific Islands and meets one and has a child with. I don't know. I don't see it as being that
was
odd.
kind of a retcon, but whatever.
That's the story they're telling. I
know that. I'm just saying, like as a snap judgment, like just based on aesthetics, you're like, really? It's kind of like if you're like, I did a story about an African man and it was like a white South African man, and you're like, oh yeah, I guess.
You're fan casting a similar storyline. Who or what do you cast? I'm just intrigued by.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I would probably, and I know this sounds weird and also ironic considering Namor was portrayed in a racist way as this early on in the comics, but I kind of would see an Asian person. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, that doesn't feel intuitive necessarily, but I feel like it would make more sense. Somewhere that's on the water, that's more like in that isn't a white dude.
I mean, it's a Pacific island. It's literally, you can't be more on the water.
I get it. I get it. I 100% get it. But just think about it on the surface, how weird that sounds, you know? The king of Atlantis is from the Pacific. Doesn't sound right. It just doesn't feel right.
That story? The reason he doesn't fit is because he's not of Atlantis. He's of the land world. So you're going to tell the same story no matter whether he's white, black, Asian, Samoan.
I get that. I'm just saying, don't look too hard into it. I think the joke is more shallow than that.
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
I think I'm missing it. I don't know.
The Atlantic, the Pacific, Atlantis.
Oh, okay.
The Pacific.
All right.
How did you not pick this up? This is what I was saying.
Maybe it's because we've been at this for 3 hours.
And the Atlantic Ocean is named after Atlantis. He's the king of Atlantis, and he's a Pacific Islander. That was the joke I was making.
All right, okay. Sorry.
See, isn't that kind of dumb
that
and
a
weird?
long time ago.
I thought you would have picked
Well,
up on
obviously
it.
I didn't.
That's why I kept overemphasizing Atlantis.
It was not connecting.
Well, either way, that's the joke I was making. It is weird that Black Adam, who's Egyptian, is played by a Samoa person.
There's a lot
Okay.
about Black Adam that
Oh, we'll have to get into that sometime because wow,
if we have to. It's a rough one.
Was that bad?
Yeah.
That one was so bad,
And it doesn't matter anymore. They've already said they're not going forward with any of it.
No,
And he's
Yeah, in
essentially
fact-
said thanks for everything, but goodbye to the DC universe.
after the 15 years of developing that movie that The Rock specifically did, now he's like, bye, I guess. I heard he was actually in talks to do a Marvel film. Oh man.
I don't know. I don't see him getting the same free reign that DC gave him. So
Oh no, not at all. But I could see him making a cameo, and
all right, quick fan cast. The Rock as a Marvel character.
Ooh. Instinctually, I want to say Drax, but that doesn't work.
You can't
do that.
Drax.
No. Let's see. Tombstone. Probably
Do you
not.
paint him white?
Do you put The Rock in whiteface? I don't know. I don't know. He's just the first thing that popped in my mind. I don't really necessarily think that that it just popped in there. Let me think. Does he have to be bald? Because
No, you could do hair.
okay, Namor the submarine. No.
I mean, I don't have one off the top of my head. I'm straining myself.
You know what? Who's the dude from the Wrecking Crew with the wrecking ball?
Oh, I believe is that Wrecker?
Is that right? Because that's it kind of screams that to me.
Huh.
Like he's not Absorbing Man, but he might be that guy.
Huh.
Like that makes sense
Except
to me.
like he doesn't have any character. I mean, The Rock is
That's
way
true.
too big of a personality and a charismatic guy to be that guy in the Wrecking Crew.
Well, maybe Rhino then, or it's
Hmm.
probably not Scorpion, but maybe Rhino. He also is the kind of guy that I would figure would play Eddie Brock.
Yeah, I could have seen that.
I like Tom Hardy as an actor. Those movies suck. I don't care what anybody says. Those movies are terrible. He also doesn't scream Eddie Brock to me.
Well, I mean, they did their own version of Eddie, which I'm fine with. It's not. It's, I don't
better
care.
It's better than in Spider-Man 3. Even though I totally understand that approach too. You did the evil Peter Parker. That's fine. That's totally fine. But it still sucked real bad. If you're going to go comics accurate, the only person who could ever play Eddie Brock would have to be Brian Bosworth. But but we're not doing that. So
Could someone teleport the Boz from 1990?
it's the haircut. It's just straight up the blonde crew cut that he's got. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they modeled that look after Brian Bosworth.
No. Beefy, meathead, asshole.
Blonde crew cut, the sort of Howie Long look. Howie Long did some movies. Maybe he could play Eddie Brock. He was in Broken Arrow.
He was in a Firestorm, which my father was watching yesterday.
Oh, where he was the protagonist in that one.
Yeah.
He plays a firefighter.
Yeah, it's a vehicle just for him.
Yeah, built on the back of Backdraft.
Yeah. It's the draft of Backdraft.
Yeah, it's the Backdraft of Backdraft.
Man, I'm having trouble coming up with an ideal person for him to play.
Roll for The
Yeah.
Rock.
Yeah, I don't know.
What about?
I have to think on this.
Yeah, actually, which is weird because he's got the archetypal superhero form,
Yeah,
and yet doesn't seem to fit any of them.
maybe Ares, the god of war.
Oh. I guess, but also not really much of a character.
No, but I mean, you could maybe do something with that.
Maybe.
I mean,
Maybe he could have played-
He'd have more charisma than Black Adam did.
Well, that's for sure. Or maybe no, he wouldn't even make a good Hercules, even though he's played Hercules.
Oh, I got it. Strong guy.
With the weird spit curl?
No,
He's
no.
not tall
Like,
enough.
give him little matrix glasses and just have him be a...
He's not tall enough.
You can digitally do that.
What's his real name? It's like Guido.
Yeah, Guido.
Something.
I think they just call him Guido. Guido Strong Guy.
It's so good. That's so good. Yeah, I mean, Strong Guy, okay, all right.
I don't want to see that, but at least it would give him
I don't either.
time to talk and show his muscles. And
well, it's better than him playing Warpath or something, but...
Yeah, I mean, Warpath's a cooler character.
Oh, 100%. Warpath and Thunderhawk both. Not Thunderhawk. Yeah.
Yeah?
No, Thunderhawk is from Street Fighter. But also from Marvel? Isn't that his name? Isn't his name Thunderhawk?
T-Hawk? Yeah.
He's called T-Hawk in Street Fighter.
Thunderhawk, Marvel.
Isn't that his name? Because Warpath does have a brother. He was part of the branch-off X-Men crew that saved the original from Krakoa.
Yeah.
It wasn't Warpath, because
Thunderbird.
Warpath was from Thunderbird. There you go. Thunderbird.
And then there's Thunder Chicken and Thunder Vulture.
Mm-hmm.
Thunder Rooster.
Mm-hmm. Spider-Man villain, Thunder Vulture.
Thundercock.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thundercock, yeah. Which was my nickname in college. There's Thunder Chick.
Actually, that's
that's
an actual thing, Thunder Chick.
Oh my god, damn it. God damn it.
Thunderhawk is the father of Thunder Chick.
Oh my god.
In Earth 9602.
You mean Thunderbird?
No, Thunderhawk is the father of Thunder Chick.
Okay. Either way, both Warpath and Thunderbird should have been played by Billy from Predator. I think we can all agree on that.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other...
Of course.
Obviously. Yep, there he is.
Man, that is such a tough casting. You could do Luke Cage.
What, The Rock is Luke Cage? A black man? What? I don't like what you're doing with this at all.
I mean, The Rock identifies as black as well.
No, he doesn't. He's Samoa. He identifies as Samoa. They talk about it in several movies that he's in. He's a Pacific Islander.
You jumped the growing conversation for glad I came across this, and I'll give you some context and truth. I identify exactly what I am, both. Equally proud, black Samoan.
I've never heard him claim that he's black. I believe you. I'm just saying that is the first I've heard of it.
They talked a lot more about it when he was a professional wrestler. He was booked as a black wrestler.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, I mean, there's a whole lot of racism in the WWE, but
no shit.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I believe his father
was black, I believe.
Yeah. He identifies as black.
What movie was that in that he went back to the island and then they
that was Hobbs and Shaw?
Hobbs and Shaw, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I think associate with The Rock.
I think there's also a lot more room for him to express a lesser seen part of his culture.
Sure.
Which,
whatever he's comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think he maybe I don't maybe it's like picking his favorite child. I don't really know. It's not for me to say, but I think he does express more Samoan culture than black culture, but hey, I don't know. This is probably a conversation we are not equipped to.
No, we do not have the tools or resources to be able to have this conversation. We are not. Yes, no. So anyway, that's much like James Gunn. So James Gunn took over DC Studios, which I think is a great thing comparatively. I just think it's a good thing now. And this was an interesting quote because the former co-CEO of DC was former favorite writer turned complete asshole Jeff Johns. Johns said that okay, that's from a fan talking. This is about Jeff Johns. I think this is... Let me make sure I credit the right person. Okay, so James Gunn responded to a fan who talked about Warner Brothers studio interference with DC, at that point EU, which was 100% a thing. And this was the response. quote, as long as the studio doesn't override you and your directors at every turn, I, for one, have confidence that you'll actually be making decisions for the DCU that I can get on board with. In my opinion, worth exactly nothing. True. It was studio interference that derailed the previous attempt at a DCU, and it wouldn't surprise me to learn that Jeff Johns was quite frustrated. True, but I think Jeff Johns also is terrible at movies, because most of his comics are good to a certain point, like very good. But then he co-wrote Green Lantern and Wonder Woman, 1984.
Yeah, it's like,
So, yeah,
waiting for that
that's
shoe
the
to
bomb
drop.
that drops. You're like, oh, I don't know what the difference between writing a movie script and a comic script are that makes him so terrible at it, but there it is. I'm reading from thedirect.com. James Gunn made it clear that his position is different from Jeff Johns and Zack Snyder, that Gunn is the top of the food chain for DC Studios, which Snyder never was, Johns never was. Remember, they had like 5 different CEOs take over during that 10-year period?
Mm-hmm.
I remember at one point they had recruited the guy who spearheaded the X-Men franchise over at Fox. He didn't last all that long. There was a woman involved at some point, which it shouldn't be something that we have to note that that's the way that works, apparently. But yeah, I mean, they've had so many reshufflings and so many bosses that finally James Gunn and Peter Safran are going to have final say. They're going to be the Kevin Feige of the DC universe, which I think is good. I think it's a little late for DC. They've already put out 10 years worth of continuity that's garbage, and they've fucked themselves yet again by making a Batman movie that's good.
Yeah.
Just like they did with
Nolan?
the Batman Begins. Yeah, with Nolan, because Nolan's Batman movies being good and them making those movies are the reason that Marvel jumped out ahead and they had to go play catch up. Instead of like building a universe like you're supposed to, they were like, we'll just do the opposite of Marvel. What is that? Who cares? We're just doing the opposite, good or not. Instead of building characters and then putting them together as a team, introduce a bunch of characters kind of as a team and then make a team movie.
Yeah, and have your quote-unquote quality projects just be one-offs that aren't connected at all. The Batman, whether you like it or not, Joker.
But that was later. That was after their attempt to create a unified universe failed because Snyder was in charge of the vision. So they make the same fucking mistake that DC Comics made up until 1985 when they had to do a Crisis on Infinite Earths to fix it. You had too many one-offs that contradict each other with all these writers, too many cooks in the fucking kitchen, and then you have to go and fix it with the huge continuity shaping crossover. Did they not learn anything from anything they've done before?
Although, let's look at it this way. Has anybody ever done what Marvel's done over these past 20 years?
No, it's a DC thing to do.
Well, I know, but I'm just
right
saying,
there
like,
is a DC thing to do.
Maybe we just think, like, oh, if they had made Batman and an Aquaman and a Superman and a Wonder Woman, like, all tied them together the way that Marvel did, that it would work. And maybe that was a 1 in a million thing. That it all lined up that way, built to something, built to, another something, and just has become this juggernaut. Maybe that's something that just was never actually ever going to happen.
I remember reading an interview with Feige when they were like, oh, are you going to eventually do an Avengers movie? And he was like, no, not anytime soon, because obviously you would have a budget of $700 million, so no. And then, but like 2 years after that, they were like, oh, I guess we can do Avengers now. And also, it was kind of a miracle that those worked because a lot of them were bad. Iron Man 2 off the bat was bad. Thor was not good, and they couldn't do a Hulk movie. So, it was because Iron Man was good and Captain America was decent, is the only reason. Because Incredible Hulk, though part of the DCU, or the MCU, they can't replicate because of that weird contract they had with Ed Norton and Universal. So only by accident were they able to create enough fanfare to make Avengers. Really. So, yeah, maybe it is rare, but, it's still the best way to do that. It is the most logical way to create a cinematic universe. Introduce these characters and then wow everybody by putting them all on the screen at the same time.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. And they did it wrong. It's something that is never poked at. The idea that maybe that was just magic that can't be replicated.
Maybe. I mean, even though it's just obvious. It's just an obvious way to do it. But yeah, it did require a lot of luck. And to quote James Gunn, this is what James Gunn responded to that fan on Mastodon, because fuck Twitter now, apparently. Quote, "The position is different than it was with Zack, as in Zack Snyder, etc. Peter and I are the heads of DC Studios. The only studio interference would be from us." So he has the end-all be-all say, which is something they needed to have the entire fucking time.
Yeah.
And I wish they had.
Well, I mean, they're also, again, this is what they say at the beginning, but the turmoil at Warner Brothers right now, I don't know if you can guarantee you're going to have that. I mean, they may go through another, redesign, overhaul, execs might come and go. A lot of things can change as they have so recently.
Yeah, I mean, I've said before, I think the superhero movie glut is a bubble waiting to burst. And of course, everybody's been saying that for the last 20 years now. So just like they did with zombie movies, everybody's like, oh, they'll stop making those. And then 20 years later, it's still every other movie is a zombie movie on Netflix, Hulu and Tubi or whatever. But so I think it's a little late for them to do this, but it is also the most positive thing they could have done. And I think it's a smart move. It's a great thing to finally purge them of the Snyder musk. and I'm glad that they finally have gotten something of a cohesive vision. I don't know if that's good, but considering Peacemaker, which is totally underrated show, actually a pretty good show.
Yeah.
The Suicide Squad, which while being long and kind of masturbatory, one of the better DCEU films by far, I think you could be in worse hands. So
there's hope for the future.
There is hope. Like Superman, there is hope. Yeah. And they're apparently going to reveal their slate of films soon. In 2023, which is now. So, some of the people, sadly, that we lost this last year were some of the giants in Silver and Modern Age comics, both in mainstream and indie, circles, including Aileen Kaminsky Crum, who died in November at 74. She was famously a comic book artist, which is amazing for, because there weren't a lot of women comic book creators in her era. And she should be heralded as one of the pioneers. She was married to R. Crumb, or Robert Crumb, who is one of the premier indie artists, the comic book artists of the 20th century. We lost her, unfortunately. We did lose one of the Power Rangers, too, by the way.
Yeah.
You and I were too old for that, but still. Yeah, we did lose Jason David Frank, who killed himself, unfortunately.
It's too bad.
It's really sad. And one of the pillars, one of the seminal, foundational voices of not only our childhood, but I think of generations of people who defined the character for millions. Kevin Conroy, who played Batman in Batman the Animated Series and many other things. The voice of Batman. The unquestionable, undisputed voice of Batman. Kevin Conroy. He died of intestinal cancer in November at 66. He even got to play Bruce Wayne in live action one time. So, was it Titans? Then we also lost, unfortunately, Kevin O'Neill.
Yeah.
Also in November at 69 of cancer, once again. He was, of course, the illustrator for The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, written by Alan Moore. A unique artist with a very specific style. And I think that is a sad loss for everybody.
One of a kind.
Yeah, definitely one of a kind. And that is sad. We lost a lot of Spanish artists, which is weird. Creators, at least. And French, too. It's really kind of odd. Tom Palmer, who worked on The Avengers, he was 81. He was one of those guys that never got a lot of fanfare, but was a renowned artist and loved in the community. And this isn't comic related, but we did unfortunately lose Nichelle Nichols from Star Trek this year.
Yeah.
At 89 from heart failure. That one was sad. You and I have the privilege to have met Nichelle Nichols at the James Kirk days in Riverside, Iowa, where she was one of the judges for the costume contest, which is really a great story because we were there and the judges were Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov, George Takei, obviously, who plays Sulu, and Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhura. And somebody came up on stage for the Star Trek costume contest as a stormtrooper. And the entire crowd booed and jeered at the guy. And then, and in one of the greatest moments of any, like, meeting a Star Trek actor ever, during the boos, George Takei gets up and hushes the crowd and says, "There's room in the universe for all of us." And then everybody in the crowd's like, "God damn it, you're right. God damn it. How can you argue with George Takei talking about equality? God damn it. I wanted to hit on the Star Trek.
Fine.
Star
Damn
Wars
my
fans."
tribalism.
But it was an amazing moment, and Nichelle was definitely part of that. I actually physically met Nichelle a couple of times at cons when I was a kid. Wonderful person, good singer, underrated singer. She is the one that sang the lyrics to the Star Trek theme song that most people don't know about. Also famously had an affair with Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek. That was a thing. Probably not a highlight, but I think her best contribution and most interesting story from the Star Trek era was that because her character was treated as essentially a glorified secretary or a receptionist, she wanted to leave the show, but Martin Luther King Jr. himself called her and said that his children and his entire family loved Star Trek, watched Star Trek actively, and was proud of her for representing, African American people on screen without stereotype or racial issue, and that leaving the show would, I think, damage the image of, Black Americans in living rooms every day. So she stayed because, he asked her to, which is incredible. That, I think, changed a lot.
Yeah, that's an amazing story.
It is. It's fantastic. Good. That's amazing. So we also lost Alan Grant, a Scottish writer who wrote, I think, he wrote a bunch of Batman with Norman Brayfogle, if I remember right.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, and then he definitely wrote Judge Dredd. That's definitely a thing. Mm-hmm. But I'm pretty sure he wrote with Alan Brayfogle during the Shadow of the Bat days and all that. Yeah, that's off the dome. I didn't look it up.
That is factually accurate.
Woohoo! And then one of the biggest losses in the comic book world was the passing of Tim Sale.
Yeah.
Who worked almost exclusively with Jeff Loeb, poor guy. And he was an Eisner Award-winning artist. Well, that is true. You're right. Jeff Loeb's best stuff came with Tim Sale, 100%. He was so involved with Jeff Loeb that his artwork was even included in the TV show Heroes, which Jeff Loeb was an executive producer on. But he did Batman: The Long Halloween,
Spider-Man Blue, Daredevil Yellow,
Spider-Man-
Hulk Gray, Captain America White,
Superman for All Seasons,
Challenges of the Unknown.
What's the Catwoman one he did? It's the one where we find out that Carmine Falcone is her dad. That
When in Rome
comes from that. When in Rome, there it is. Yeah, a fantastic book.
Batman Elegy.
And his artwork is
Batman
also
Ego.
singular.
No, Elegy, yeah.
It's very unique, and we're really gonna miss him. That's a really sad one. And then the two that really hit me hard. Before I say that, I'd also like to say Tom Veitch. We lost Tom Veitch. He died of COVID. Great. He was the brother of Rick Veitch, who was a famous writer who took over for Alan Moore on Swamp Thing. Mm-hmm. And Tom Veitch took over for Grant Morrison on Animal Man, which are great books back in the day. Some of the best DC's ever put out. Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run may be the greatest superhero run by a writer ever.
It's up there.
And like the Veitch brothers both took over very competently. I think Rick Veitch's Swamp Thing was great, and Tom Veitch's Animal Man didn't drop off much from Grant Morrison. I thought they were both very, very talented. Then we lost Brian Augustin, who a lot of his work was in editing. He was 67 years old. He died in February. He died of a stroke. He was a long-time bestie of writer Mark Waid, and he did a lot of Waid's work, kind of like Loeb and Tim Sale. The one thing that people would probably remember Augustin for was Gotham by Gaslight, which is a fantastic book, and it almost had a video game. There was a canceled Gotham by Gaslight video game for the Xbox that you can see. Yeah, I've actually seen play for it, like an actual video of the play, and it looks awesome. I don't know why they didn't do it. It looks really cool. But yeah, it may be the most, other than Red Sun, the most famous Elseworld story, probably. I would say.
Yeah.
I would say. I mean, I don't know if I would think so. Because, like, what else do you have? I mean, you have a lot of other good ones, but not that people readily recognize, I would think. And then, of course, I think the last two that I'll mention are the ones that hit Jake and I hard for the era in which we grew up reading comics. First of all, Neil Adams, the great Neil Adams, one of the greatest artists, the guy that defined what DC characters looked like for generations. He was the guy, like all of those like promotional DC things and all the like stuff, anytime you'd see a Batman or a Superman or a Wonder Woman like somewhere outside of the comic book world, like on a poster or on a billboard or a cardboard cutout or whatever, it was usually Neil Adams. And his work was grounded. It wasn't all that stylized, but it was very like precise and lifelike. He died at 80 of sepsis, which is terrible. He was a big fan of creators' rights, the whole Image Comics issue, where he believed that if you created a character as an artist, you should probably get at least a little taste of that cheddar cheese, from coming from that. But one of the greats. And I remember the documentary I was in, they interview Joss Whedon, but his favorite moment ever at Comic-Con was running into Neil Adams in an elevator. And that's saying a lot because, he's just, for the 70s and 80s, he defined the look and feel of DC Comics. The only other person that you could possibly say rivaled that, we also lost this year of pancreatic cancer at the age of 67. We lost George Perez.
Yeah.
Which, that one's hard. George Perez is one of the most sort of underrated, but also highly praised comic book artists of all time. He was the one guy that they trusted to do Crisis on Infinite Earths for his attention to detail and his precision. He also was, even after he was sort of like in the regular rotation of comic book artists, they tapped him to finish the Justice League Avengers crossover that took 20 years to make with Kurt Busiek. If you ever get a chance to really look at George Perez's work, go back and look at some of the issues of Crisis on Infinite Earths. The detail that he puts in every panel is mind-blowing. It's crazy how much stuff he puts in to a microscopic scale. He was one of the most prolific and detail-oriented artists, I think, in the entirety of comics. He may be the most detail-oriented artist in the history of comics. And great stuff.
Yeah, very emotive artwork.
It's true. But also kind of like grounded and realistic. It wasn't like, McFarlane-type stylization. You could tell he came out of the school of Kurt Swan and Ditko and artists like that from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. He definitely had that kind of feel to it, but he was so... Go back and read some of his Wonder Woman stuff from post-Crisis. Wow, it's so good. His artwork is just impeccable. And that was a sad one. We lost him this year too. And I actually met George Perez one time. I feel really stupid about it. I was a little kid. I was at a con in Kansas City, and he was one of the featured guests. And I went to a panel hosted by George Perez. And somebody was talking about his underrated book, Saxon Violence, which was a completely underrated book, kind of an adult book, not quite like some of the other stuff he did for DC. And he was talking about it, and he was answering questions about, like, what are the perils of doing an adult comic book when you're, a mainstream comic book artist and all that. And then I raised my hand and he called on me and I said, "Could you draw Batman?" And I think I lost the plot a little bit in there. Because he goes, "Oh, okay." And then draws Batman. on this big win, lose, or draw type paper pad or whatever. And I was like, I probably could have asked better questions, but good dude, kid. Nice guy. I in fact have a copy of Crisis on Infinite Earths #7 with the flash dies, autographed by George Perez. And I forgot about this story, so it's short, but at the same con he was doing signings. And I brought my personal copy of Crisis on Infinite Earths #7, which is the only book I had him sign. And I handed it to him, and it is a beat-up garbage copy. I mean, I got it new, but it had been, under my bed at one point, in my backpack, just complete beat the shit. And he looked at it, and I'm not making this up. He turned to the rest of the people in line and goes, "See, this is a kid who reads comics." And all those middle-aged men who had these hermetically sealed copies of comics that they've never opened to have him sign for the rarity and the value of it, all just kind of shamefully looked at their shoes. And I will never forget that. It was great. Yeah, he was an amazing guy and an amazing artist. So we lost a lot of others, but those are I think the big names that we lost this year. So now we don't have to end on a sad note. We can now, that is sad, but we should celebrate their work, and we should never forget the contributions that those individuals made to the comic book genre, or sci-fi in the case of Nichelle Nichols.
Yeah, so, all the more reason to search out their work and
absolutely
re-experience it or experience it for the first time.
Especially Neil Adams and George Perez, they made such great work. Do yourself a favor. People don't put that much effort into the art that they did. Nobody does anymore. And not because I'm the next generation, they don't know what like every old person says. They just legitimately were head and shoulders above everybody else for any generation. So they're good stuff. Go ahead and check those out.
Do it.
So, I mean, geek culture is still roaring. The engines are revving. It's probably, honestly, we don't realize it because we're in it, but it's probably bigger and badder than it ever has been. And I remember you and I talked about after Spider-Man 2 came out, we're like, well, that's it. It's over. Geek culture has peaked.
Little did we know.
End. That was 2002. Yeah, little did we know. It's like when they closed down the patent office because they were like, well, everything's been invented. It's been invented. So, yeah, the 2023 has the possibility of having some good stuff in it. And hopefully the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl. So,
The thing that really matters.
well, the Royals are going to suck, but, the Chiefs might be good. So there's something.
There is something. And hopefully,
Something.
this is something good for all of you.
There it was. The year that was.
And this podcast.
So, well, don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to support your local comic shops and retailers. And from Dispatch Ajax, we would like to say, Godspeed, fair wizards.
Please, go away.